Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma. My buddy Brian E. Roach is on assignment, and so that means I will be flying solo once again in some, what do you want to say, precarious and uncharted waters for the Pittsburgh Steelers in quite possibly one of the most embarrassing games that I've ever witnessed, at least in person, a 41-10 drubbing at every level possible by the Cincinnati Bengals, who improved to 7-4 as the Steelers fall to 5-5-1 on the season, of which still isn't over. And I understand that there's a lot of ire, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration and disappointment as a fan base. In fact, there's some Vians out there, and, I'm going to obviously have to address the fire everyone crowd, but there's literally some folks out there that say, do me, not maybe myself, but quoting them, care about this team more than what the players on the field do, which is just preposterous. I guarantee you that there isn't a single player that went to that locker room as the game concluded that felt good about what was going on. It's like everyone just thinks, well, the paycheck's just in the mail. For most of these guys, that's not the case. Or direct deposit, I guess. But a lot of these guys, this is a year-to-year thing. The lifespan in the NFL is only 3 years. Is there, there's a brotherhood or community of football, obviously, where guys are going from colleges, they play together, they go to different pro teams and bounce around, but it's the not-for-long league, and it's competitive. It's very competitive. You take a look around the AFC North, which I had an interesting statistic actually this morning, that this comes from Ben Baby, who covers the Cincinnati Bengals, and he said, even though everyone in the AFC North is at least 500 or better, the Bengals are the only team with a positive TD differential. The Ravens have a -2. I'm not sure where the Steelers are at. Probably like a -1,000. There's issues. There's things we talked about, things that we hoped would be better this season, at least on paper going in, than what they are. But there are some realities that we spoke of as well. Number one was whatever team gets to 10 wins was probably going to win the AFC North. And as it stands, that obviously looks like a giant hurdle for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Baltimore Ravens, who are in just as many close of games, believe it or not. This is the difference between, picking up a win here or there, or dropping a loss or a tie here or there. The Steelers picking up a win with the Bears, but tying the Detroit Lions. A lot of people will blame the injuries, the weather, Mason Rudolph instead of Ben Roethlisberger. All valid points, but still a tie. It's what your record is. The loss against the Chargers, again, defensively, and this is the one that really hurts, is giving up 41 points in each of the last 2 games. I'm going to talk about this game. It's going to be a little painful. I'm not sure how many details I'm going to get into with it, but I want to address some of these things because there's people who blame Ben. Ben did not have a good game. Is he solely at fault? Would help maybe if the offense could do a little more than hold the ball for 2 seconds and then punt it back over so the defense gets on the field. A defense of which I'm not sure how 100% TJ Watt is. I'm not even sure. The only guy I really felt appropriate to wear here on my back nameplate is Cam grown-ass man Hayward, who's the real defensive player of the year candidate on this roster. Sorry, TJ. It's kind of getting away from you, and the injuries are part of the problem. Limited in practice during the week. How healthy was TJ? Minka looked like he was spry, but there's some other pieces and parts that I'm going to talk about because people are talking about next year being a rebuild year. I'm sorry. I think the Steelers are already in that. We use the word reload instead of rebuild because it is a 5-5-1 team right now. What will they be over the course of the next 6 games with 2 games on the schedule against the Baltimore Ravens? Division opponent. This is going to be really interesting to see what happens too because the game last night, Sunday Night Football, the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Or, I'm sorry, in the Cleveland Browns. They get the Steelers next. I'm thinking ahead here. 16-10, a very close game. I mean, the Ravens are eking out games like 16-13 against the Bears. They lose to the Dolphins. A 3-point victory in OT against the Vikings. Another overtime win against the Indianapolis Colts. They've had some games early on where they were laying some points on opponents. They beat the Chiefs by 1, obviously. They squeaked out a 2-point win with the longest field goal in history against the Lions. This is the side of the win-loss column that you would have hoped the Steelers would have been on, with some very similar rebuilds, and the Ravens with a lot of injuries. And someone out there, some idiot, is already thinking to comment on YouTube. Sorry, I had to call this out. Don't bring the moronic conversation of, well, John Harbaugh is a better coach. I have a lot of respect for John Harbaugh, the way the Ravens organization is built. It's also why I thought the Ravens and Steelers would still be the primary contenders in this division. Cincinnati has snuck up on everyone, but there's still some football to be played, right? In order for the Ravens to get where they had to be, though, they had to have a 5-11 season, an 8-8 season, and a 9-7 season. They did make it back to the playoffs in 2018 at 10-6. They lost their first game there. They hadn't actually won a playoff game with Lamar Jackson and only have one under their belt in the last 3 playoff appearances since kicking over to him as a starter midway through the 2018 season. If you remember, they benched Joe Flacco, who also may or may not have had some injury problems with his back that led to some of that as well. In the process, when you're drafting higher in the draft and you've got tons of picks, because don't forget, they also had some players, some key free agents. They build very similar to the Steelers, counting on the compensatory formula. I understand we're talking Steelers here, but I'm trying to make some comparisons as to what is going on to ease your mind, because there's so many folks that have freaked out over a loss. Yeah, worst loss to the Bengals, I think, ever. I'm not sure if it still stood, but Ed Bouchette had tweeted out that if the score had stood with the Steelers only scoring 3 points at 41-3, it would have been the worst in the 52-year history of the series based on the point spread. But actually, I'm not sure that still stood, but it's the first time the Steelers have been swept in this series since 2009, and they had a pretty solid lead overall against the Bengals, and of course the Browns as well. And I could sense some of that is part of the frustration with fans, because they look and they see it's the Browns on the schedule, it's the Bengals on the schedule. These are guaranteed wins. These are gimmies. These teams are catching up, and this is what happens when you build some of these rosters. You get the opportunity of drafting earlier. The Bengals especially. I mean, look at what's in the AFC North. 2 number 1 overall draft picks at quarterback. And Cleveland has two number 1s, because you had, not only do they have Baker Mayfield, but they have Myles Garrett. Of course, Joe Burrow being the other quarterback I'm referencing, who I feel is actually very solid. I'm not sure if Baker's seriously hurt or what, but it didn't look good, and it hasn't been looking good with him, with Cleveland, with all of those pieces, and they have the guys on rookie contracts, and they're able to spend money in free agency and bring in guys. So have the Ravens. That's how you get a Calais Campbell, okay? Those things happen because of finding a quarterback that's capable of playing, and playing on a much cheaper deal than obviously Ben Roethlisberger, but look around the league, Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson and all these guys that are getting paid big bucks. The money bags are just dropping at their front door. They're swimming around in a vault like the show DuckTales with Scrooge McDuck, okay? These guys are getting paid. The younger guys, not so much anymore. They're starting to, okay? Josh Allen with the Bills, that'll start to hit them, so you can't make or land some of these mega deals with free agency. But yeah, the Steelers, the way people are talking about, they didn't do enough in the offseason. And I don't want to beat the dead horse and be a broken record again, but once again, when we got to free agency, the Steelers they didn't even have cap space. Ben Roethlisberger had to take a pay cut. They had to make some tough decisions on who to let go. One of the fine commenters that follows our show all of the time, thank you for reminding me about the COVID stuff that caused the cap to not go up as much as many may have anticipated, and all of the calculations that the Steelers had made into their salary cap, into how they were spending money for the roster, likely had a larger figure in mind. Maybe they could have kept a Mike Hilton. Maybe they could have kept a Bud Dupree, who, by the way, 1 sack in Tennessee. He hasn't been so hot, real lukewarm there. I didn't think he would be the greatest fit. A lot of people just say, well, he had a great contract here. I think he was a great fit for what the Steelers did. Not to take anything away from Alex Highsmith, but he's still young. But it's still a body that needed replaced somewhat on the defense. Now, there's people with hot takes like Andrew Filipponi saying, well, this is why I criticize them letting Mike Hilton and Steve Nelson go. But yeah, Steve Nelson was let go for Cam Sutton. Cam Sutton was not a major issue. In fact, Cam Sutton was returning punts because there's injuries and there's other things going on that preclude the defense maybe from being as solid as they used to be. Stopping the run, apparently not anything that the Steelers are going to do anytime soon. I don't know how they fix this without some of the key players they need on the field. Once again, excuse me when I don't get a breath here. Flying solo, getting some coffee. Some good Monday morning quarterbacking going on here. Reloading the Steelers, right? So you take a look at what the Steelers have done, and it's still, again, there's still some close games. This wasn't one of them, unfortunately. You kind of wish that some of the other ones that they were a part of would have turned out differently over the course of the season here. This Bengals game, they actually had one maybe turning point opportunity here that blew up in their face, of which I'll cover in a little bit. I think one of the actually, this is a pretty good spot to bring this up, and I'm going to talk about the defense here because Mike Pursuta always hits these out of the park. He's one of the more rational guys who covers the Steelers beat, and he always has his 3 takes that resonate. Usually Monday mornings, he tweets this out, and he says, they got by with substandard O-line play and an inability to run consistently for a long time. This is very true. This is going back a few years even. This is what it looks like when the D-line and edges crumble. You can work around one of those deficiencies. 2 is a deal breaker. And this is the point that I'd like to make with the deficiencies too, but let's see what else Mike had to say. Take number 2 is the 32-yard touchdown pass to T. Higgins is what it's supposed to look like when the Steelers throw deep to Claypool, but too often doesn't. The way Mixon can watch a play unfold, then get to the second level with momentum is the way it needs to work with Harris, but almost never does. And then pointed out on the pregame show, Bengals were the better team. Sweep confirms guard has changed as Browns had in January, October 31st, notwithstanding. Come on, that's the only one I'm not going to quite agree with yet. We don't know. Cleveland has not been putting up the points that you would expect from that. The great offensive line, right? And put a lot of money into that. Tight ends, wide receivers, the great running backs, and not the best showing for those of you who didn't see it last night. And the Browns ran for what here? Not even 50 yards. Kareem Hunt had 7 for 20. Chubb 8 for 16. Those are the numbers that looked like the Steelers' offense. The same amount of points too. Najee Harris 8 for 23. Almost kind of a reluctance to run the football and then get behind again. Again, that's always going to shoot you in the foot, and then they have to rely too much on the pass. But again, let me get into the rest of what Mike's saying here since he derailed me with those thoughts. Now it's the Ravens' turn. Welcome to the jungle. It gets worse here every day. Nice Guns N' Roses reference there. Didn't used to make it worse before it gets better. I think it gets worse. If it gets worse, it gets worse here into December. I don't know that it gets worse going into next season. See, things are a little bit different. The Steelers had different needs when they went into the draft. A lot of people are going to cry and complain, well, they didn't take Creed Humphrey as a center. They're still building along the offensive line. You still got a number of picks, like 7 of them that are all contributing, at least 4 that are starting, unless you want to count Presley Harvin as a punter too. But Najee Harris is a franchise running back. Whoever the quarterback is next year, which I don't care about right now when it comes to the quarterback position. Too many people talking. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, draft Kenny Pickett, whatever. Desmond Ridder. I'm not going there just yet. And in fact, I'm not sold at this point in time that they will draft a quarterback. My position is, why draft one? Use Rudolph. Bring back Haskins. Maybe that's all assuming Ben Roethlisberger doesn't come back. And with a better offensive line, maybe he's better. Ben's holding on to the ball a little bit, and that had been a problem in the earlier games. I think some of that's his wide receivers not getting open. I think wide receivers maybe not running the proper routes. Balls are getting thrown beyond where people can catch them, but then there's also ones where they should be catching the ball and not. And there's a lot of things where that all comes together as a perfect storm, and everybody's just going to say, well, that's the coach. Well, it's not just Ben, but There's some things there that maybe could be different, but my position on that is like put some better pieces in play. Definitely going to need a corner. We saw what it was like, which I didn't think Joe Hayden, one player, would make that big of a difference defensively against the Cincinnati Bengals. And holy cow, was I ever write it down right here, folks. This is November 29th. It is a Monday. Joe was wrong. I'm wrong here. If Joe Hayden still got anything left next year, I'm bringing him back too. I would draft a corner too, but we know the Steelers hadn't had the biggest success unless they could grab somebody in free agency. That could be something too. But that's the reason why I'm not freaking out about Steve Nelson or Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton he was like a 30 to 60% snap guy. He wasn't always blitzing. He wasn't always a monster in coverage. We used to call him Mighty Mouse. I'm not going to totally downplay him. He's probably better than what they got now. But at the same time, I don't know that he's a top 10 nickel corner in the league either. He's definitely not a top 5. So top 10, we're talking about maybe the top third of the league. He's in the top half, maybe top 15, 16. I'm capable of saying that. And I know what he did. He got the pick 6. Yeah. That's pour some salt on the wounds. Good for him. I don't know what his negotiations were like. I don't know if he was hurt when he left Pittsburgh. But they didn't have the money to pay him or Bud Dupree. And it's coming full circle now back to what I'm about to say about the defense. Those players were players that needed replaced. Steven Nelson was another player that needed replaced. I thought the Cam Sutton signing initially was to make sure he was there not only to replace Hilton, but to maybe replace Joe Hayden in 1 year. And to be a depth piece should someone get hurt, because Joe Hayden, as mentioned numerous times, usually does not play previously what was a full 16-game season. Without Joe Hayden out there, and yeah, no more Steve Nelson, no more Mike Hilton, Arthur Millette, and especially James Pierre. And it's also very heartbreaking, let me say that Akello Weatherspoon, who they traded for, can't seem to find his way and get on the field. I'm not sure if he's washed as a player or if he's just not ingrained into the defensive scheme, or what the case is. And they traded for him. I wasn't really expecting him to be a starter, but they also had to trade for him because Justin Lane has not worked out as a third-round draft pick. Justin Lane came out the previous week. No, not the Chargers. 2 weeks ago against the Lions, and he couldn't get off blocks, and he was suspect for the whole series he's in. That was the last time I think I've seen him on the field. They tried. They gave him another shot. That is just not working. The Steelers will need some DBs in the future. Okay? So they've got deficiencies. Obviously, we're talking offensive line too, but let's go back along the defensive line. Last year you had TJ Watt. Okay? TJ was on trajectory, defensive player of the year. He's still going to be in that conversation because he's TJ Watt. He looked, I wouldn't say out of place, but he didn't look like Superman. I guess our expectation of TJ is so high because of what he's always capable of doing on the field that when he doesn't live up to that level, we're disappointed, which would make complete sense. It still doesn't mean he's terrible. I'd still take him out there over Derek Tuska and Taco Charlton, who they're left. That's all that remains. A lot of people will say, oh, well, those are like bargain, basement, whatever. Look, the free agency period starts in March, folks. The guys that get over the summer are discarded pieces from the Thanksgiving Day turkey. There's nothing else left that they could go get. And when you get somebody and one of those signings ends up working out for you, that's a feather in your cap. When it doesn't, it really shouldn't be any sweat off of your eyebrow, because these are just players you're trying to have fill in maybe as a backup, rotational, seldom getting in, maybe special teams or something of that nature. When it comes to some of the other players, so last year, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, I wonder if he'll get his recognition, because, man, what a game by Cam. Still giving it his all. It's got to be exhausting for him. How many snaps did my favorite grown-ass player play yesterday? He was in there a ton. I don't think he came out. And I think that's also part of what's going on here. 79%, 54 of the 68. So he wasn't out there for 14 plays. Schematically, I'm not sure the Steelers ran a 3-4. I may have seen it once or twice in the game yesterday. Sometimes it's hard not to nod out when you're watching your team just get completely demolished. But Henry Mondeau was out there maybe a couple plays. It's actually Mondeau was out there 19 plays. So he was rotating in more as defensive end. But what I'm trying to get at is the four-man front. You don't have Tyson Alulu. You don't have Stephon Tuitt. And then they don't have Bud Dupree. Those are three names from last year along that line. The same thing Mike Pursuta is saying. You're not getting that up front. And that is where players like Joe Mixon are getting to the second level, rushing for a career high, 28 carries, 165 yards, 2 TDs. Great for my fantasy team, by the way. Yeah, I tend to stick with AFC North because I know the AFC North teams a lot. So don't criticize me on that. It's fantasy. It's not my reality team. But geez, the Steelers just giving up a whole ton. I mean, Joe Burrow didn't have to do a lot. Where he was asked to, 20 of 24, 190 yards, a TD and a pick, 96.2 rating. Ben ended up with a 65.4 rating, but he was at 29.1 until Pat Freiermuth made one of the more ridiculous catches that we've seen. Ben with 41 attempts in this game, just not the prettiest thing when it comes to that. But that's kind of some of the difference there, and that this defensive line could only get over to Joe Burrow twice in this game. The splash plays aren't getting created. The time of possession was very lopsided, 35-20 to 24-40 for the Steelers. Almost close to about 10 and a half minutes more of game clock in favor of the Bengals and their offense possessing the football. And you would be remiss to know some of this by penalty, though, by the way. The Bengals had 25 first downs overall. Their third down conversion rate was actually lower than the Steelers, 5 of 11 for 7 for 13. And part of this is not only that defensive line, but that defensive line is also affecting Devin Bush. I watched it. There's people trying to say, oh, he's flat on his feet. Was it Colin Dunlap? Give me a break. 93.7 The Fan, Colin Dunlap, okay? I don't really like to call people out on some of this stuff, but you watch the play and it was a draw play. And they didn't really freeze him, but the center got up to the second level because there's nobody else up front. You can't really run the 3-4 when you've got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. But aside from that fact, the 3-4 is, okay, it's first down. Maybe we can with our linebackers. Maybe we could do some type of zone, and we could also stop the run here. It's all out the window because there's nobody up front there. And this is also affecting Joe Schobert as well. You don't have Vince Williams, the run stuffer that you used to have. Robert Spillane gets hurt. I think Robert Spillane, physically, he's not the most gifted talent, but mentally, the guy is very aware when it comes to making plays. That is his, what do you want to say, superpower. But you couldn't even rotate him in to keep those inside linebackers fresh whatsoever. I thought Alex Highsmith, I didn't think it would be the biggest drop-off from Bud Dupree. He still creates pressure. Should have had a big interception that was bobbled and juggled. Oh, what a killer. Missed opportunities definitely in the game. And it led to the Bengals, who didn't miss any opportunities. That's what really makes the score even more lopsided. Let me continue. Arthur Millette ends up in there. In camp, you had Antoine Brooks vying for this position originally. And now it's been mostly Millette as of late. They've tried Trey Norwood there. Trey Norwood might come out when they're in a dime, quarters, dollar, anything where they have like a ton of DBs. 6, 7 of them, right? Even nickel, I will say, because Millette has been out there. Sometimes they'll shade Terrell Edmonds over to the one side. It all depends. But regardless, I'm not getting into too much with the X's and O's. You can see the second level of the defense. When the opposing offensive line gets to it, of course it's going to be more physical. You've got, I don't even know how big the center is. It's 300-some pounds probably for the Bengals. I'll find out. It wasn't just him, though. The guards were getting in on the inside linebackers. It was just, it was a mess. And the misdirection, Joe Mixon being able to run to one side And it was almost like the Steelers just, let's create a big muddling wall that nobody, including our own players, could get out of. It's like a moat, quicksand, whatever. And he just cuts back to the other side because he's a talented player. There's no doubt about it. He's a 3-down back. He gets it done there. And it's something that Najee Harris can't really do because the offensive line real weak. B.J. Finney filled in, did okay, but Dan Moore still. I still think there's a future for Dan Moore, but there's got to be some things with technique, perhaps even some more strength. I say this with the college players and the rookies, and get back to the draft, too, of what the Steelers were supposed to do to make this team better. They had a franchise running back and a franchise tight end. Look at that catch. The catches Freiermuth has had. I just wish that, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why Ben Roethlisberger is not finding guys looking like always in the middle of the field. It seems like Deontay Johnson's there. Claypool can be there. Unless it's this short, 1-2 yard, crossing pattern. It's never there, and that's almost more a check down. And the same thing when he looks at Najee Harris. It's Matt Canada isn't calling a check down as their primary receiver. I guarantee that they're not doing that. On the other hand, the Cincinnati Bengals are looking on the other side of the field, and Joe Burrow's not looking for 42, James Pierre, but the guy upstairs, I'm sorry, I don't know their offensive coordinator's name off the top of my head right now, drawing a blank, but if he's upstairs, he could be on the field, but you get my point. He's calling into the radio headset and saying, run this play, and that's T. Higgins going straight down the field with James Pierre in coverage. So all he's got to do is look there and see if that primary play is there, and it is. He might look off of it because he knows that's going to be the read. No, that's not really the read. It's a cat and mouse game, right? Those are the type of things that aren't happening with the Steelers' offense whatsoever. And so everybody's like, well, this offense stinks. The offensive line, I don't know. I've said before, I was hoping the interior portion of it. When we were going into camp, we still thought David DeCastro was going to be there. You get the same problems as the defensive line has, okay? Or at least the defensive front, too, because we're going to include losing Dupree there, but primarily Stephon Tuitt and Tyson Lulu. You take a look at the offensive line. They're now down to their third guard on the interior because Kevin Dotson is on IR, and now, who was filling in for him last week? Also on IR, J.C. Hassenauer, also backup center. The younger players, the other two starters here, are third-round pick Kendrick Green and then Dan Moore. If those players are first or second-round picks, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a better offensive line. For years, the Steelers had who? In the last decade, left tackle has never been the biggest strength along the offensive line. I hate to say it. Okay, you had Marquise Pouncey was a first-round pick. Bona fide, maybe Pro Bowl or Hall of Fame type career. You get spoiled there. David DeCastro fell into their lap, 2012 draft, because they knew they needed offensive line. It's a very similar parallel to a decade ago, and it took about 2-3 years to get them all in place. Marcus Gilbert was a second-round pick, but look at the other guys that were there. Flozell Adams was a left tackle there. 35, 36 years old, former Dallas Cowboy. End of his career. Last year he played in the NFL with the Steelers. I believe that's when they went to the 2010 season, that Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. Trying to think who filled the gap there, but then they went and got Mike Adams. Ohio State, second-round draft pick, didn't work out, but the same draft they drafted a guy named Kelvin Beachum in the 7th round who was undersized, yada, 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 and ended up being pretty darn good at his job, and he's still doing it over in Arizona. He got hurt, though, and there was going to be a contract thing. It was one guy or the other. You're going to sign Beachum or are you going to sign Ramon Foster? Completely undrafted. And it turns out the other undrafted guy that replaces Beachum did a pretty darn good job in Alejandro Villanueva, and you have two undrafted guys that are on the line. Matt Filer, who had been in this rotation too, playing tackle and guard over the last few years, also undrafted. So it's not unheard of. A lot of people say, well, Mike Munchak made all of this. Almost swore here. That's BS. That's the Burrow you-know-whatsu. It is... Those players were there before Mike Munchak was. Maybe he helps coach up Alejandro Villanueva, but Foster was already there. All the other guys were there. DeCastro, Pouncey, Gilbert. Maybe it helps. Maybe it was Todd Haley. Because you remember the Growing Pains 2-8-8 seasons, 2012, 2013, and Todd Haley comes in. oh, Ben's not getting along with this guy. This system's just not working. They get a few of the pieces they need, and boom, they're off to the races. Yeah, they didn't get a Super Bowl out of it. I'm sorry, folks. They get to an AFC championship. They get to a divisional game. Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game, blah, blah, blah. Go back to the Baltimore Ravens, who have one well, maybe they have two, because I think they got the Steelers in 2015, too. 2 playoff wins. They had one prior to the last season. They finally won one. Since they had their Super Bowl as well, and we're trying to figure out how to replace guys like Ed Reed and Ray Lewis and paying Joe Flacco a smuggler's ransom of a contract. These are the things that happen in the NFL. Winning Super Bowls is rare. How many does Peyton Manning have? Think to yourself. How many does Dan Marino have? Steve Young. Some of these guys. Brett Favre. I think Ben Roethlisberger doesn't get talked about in that same echelon because of the games he has, like yesterday, 2 picks, the fumble. He has games he's had like that before. Cleveland, wild card game last year, Jacksonville Jaguars a few years ago. The turnovers. I mean, that's why Eli Manning far worse on the turnover scale, I would think. At least. Definitely played more games. I think he had played more games than Ben before he hung him up, too. He's more of an Iron Man player that was always there rather than Ben getting banged up. And that also had been a problem over the years. The Steelers get into the playoffs. Ben gets hurt. Antonio Brown gets hurt. Martavis Bryant isn't there or suspended. Le'Veon Bell gets hurt. They don't have the killer bees on the field. There's just that one game, the Jacksonville Jaguars, that 13-3 season. And it goes up in smoke because they lose Ryan Shazier, the real linchpin in the defense, having those critical inside linebackers. Is Devin Bush still a guy that you would consider a bust? Is he still coming back from a knee injury he isn't fully rehabbed from? Or is it something else? Or is it like just a whole potpourri, I guess, a big mix of all of these different things affecting everyone? You know, they're not getting in Joe Burrow's face. It gives them time to throw downfield to T. Higgins or whoever James Pierre was pretty much covering. James Pierre also misses a big tackle on what is Mixon's longest run of the season, which was, it's definitely here, 32 yards. And that was when he cut back, and then he ended up being in the right position. He's in the right position against T. Higgins, too. But is he the answer, or is Joe Hayden the answer? If he's playing there, Joe Hayden definitely has more experience. He's probably a better talent than an undrafted player that you have filling in. Yes, you got to fill those in because you had different needs in the draft. I still will not back off of grabbing a franchise running back and a franchise tight end. Those guys are going to be here for the next 8 to 10 years, you would think, with Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth. That is going to help whoever the next guy is at quarterback. You need that too. Defensively, you weren't going to spend picks on defense. You could have spent picks on the offensive line. We've gone through it. Tevin Jenkins isn't doing anything with the Chicago Bears. You take a look at some of the other guys like Alex Leatherwood. They're moving him all over the place in Las Vegas with the Raiders. There's some busts. The only guy I think anybody can make an argument for is Creed Humphrey. And guess what? The Steelers, they don't get another 7 points on the board. They don't beat Cleveland if they don't draft Pat Freiermuth. Throwing my hands up in the air for those of you who aren't on our video version. Let me go through a few of these plays. Hopefully, it's not too much of the dead horse, but it's showing you the reload where you had to replace 3 players that had been Pro Bowl or all pro level players on the offensive line. And on the defense, you lose Bud Dupree, prize free agent. So was Mike Hilton. You had to release Steven Nelson. There's 3 bodies you think going in. Cam Sutton, yeah, he could live to the level. I think he's fine. He's one of the few guys I don't have anything to complain about when it comes to this loss. I really don't think Cam Sutton, I think he missed one tackle where he had a perfect read on it. Yeah, such is life. That seems to be what the entire game was for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Minka fielded an interception. He looked pretty good coming off of, I don't know what kind of symptoms or illness he had from being on the COVID list, but he looked like basically his old self, and he was getting in there, and as the last man sometimes, or the bleeding could have been far worse. It could have been much like the Chargers game, or even the Lions for that matter. The Steelers have had a problem over this streak of games. Does it get any better or any worse as we go forward? I don't know. That's something for the next episode, but I could tell you what I could tell you about this one. And Cam Hayward played well. Not sure about some of the rest of these guys. Definitely issues all abound, and It's just certain areas that they're targeting on the field. It seemed like they just picked on James Pierre and James Pierre and James Pierre, and it's like you have one bad game, but the rest of the team's got to make up for it. And there was plenty of other bad going around. Like Ben wasn't even a 60% completion guy, 24 of 41, 263 yards. Like I said, he had like a 29-1 or a 29-6 rating with the 2 picks before he threw that Freiermuth interception, sacked 3 times. All of them are pretty much inopportune times. I felt like there were times where he was holding on to the ball or trying to do his pump fake thing. And part of it is some are going to say he doesn't have time. But when I'm counting out there and I'm getting to like 4 seconds, I think he has enough time. There was one particular sack where I was trying to figure out, did he see a ghost because he moved out of the pocket and right into the pressure where for once maybe Dan Moore's jersey wasn't on top of his in the laundry, you know? Deontay Johnson looks like a star. If I'm looking at anyone, where do the Steelers spending money? Oh, they don't ever pay for free agents. This is true. They're going to pay some of their guys because they got who's getting paid on the offense right now that's got a long-term contract? No one except for Ben Roethlisberger, and he's got the void years, and we don't even know he's going to be back for next season. I think Deontay is the next guy that you're banking on here. Caught 9 passes for 95 yards, one of the bright spots. Claypool, 3 of 8. He had at least 2 drops in this game. I remember one on 3rd down, and that was one of the more critical ones that really, really hurt. I'll go through some of these plays, too, real quick. Some of the other guys that get in on this game. Anthony Miller makes a catch that was down at his ankles. I'm not even sure how that happened. And Anthony Miller is a good name to bring up because of what happened with James Washington. James Washington plays, I almost thought that Miller played more snaps than Washington. It's actually neck and neck. Washington played 2 more snaps, 27 to Miller's 25. I felt like Claypool and Deontay Johnson play all but one play this entire game. They're on the field the entire time. Juju Smith-Schuster would have been very helpful here in this game. Ray was actually coming along. But Miller's ascension says there are problems with Washington. Was that problem part of the Mike Hilton pick? It might have been. I think Claypool and Ben were on the same page too, or on that first one, and that's what's really killer. Excuse me once again. As I get geared up, let's go through. I don't think I have any other performances. In fact, we would do a game ball article over on the website, Josh, and it's like, no, you can't even do that. Who do you give a game ball to when everything just stinks to high heaven? The Steelers here, they win the coin toss. It's about the one thing that goes in their favor in this entire game. They defer, but the Bengals come out 10 plays, 75 yards, 5.5 minutes. And there's a 2nd and 7, a number of penalties, Bill Vinovich and his crew. I don't have a whole lot I could say about officiating because obviously, disclaimer here, when you get just totally pounded 41-10, that's not because of the officials. But it didn't really help the flow, especially during this first series. Bush called with an offside. Sutton called with a defensive pass interference. Some of this moves the ball a little bit, declined. It's erratic. Excuse me. But anyways, 10 plays, 75 yards. Cincinnati goes up 7-0. The Steelers' offense, a whole whopping 3 plays. They get a first down on the first play. Looks like they're starting to move the ball a little bit. I don't know what happened here with Chase Claypool, but if Ben would have went deep instead of short, and it seems like everything goes short, I don't know if Ben needs deprogrammed from the Randy Fichtner offense. This is another thing, too. Ben was doing a lot of things in Randy Fichtner's first year, and I think that's why there was some success there that was carryover from Todd Haley. I think there's some carryover here, and maybe it's just how much can you install that's brand spanking new and not screw the pooch here. Maybe. But if he goes deeper, I thought Eli Apple was the equivalent of James Pierre in this game. There's a lot of equivalents, like Mike Pursuta said here. One of them was Najee Harris should be able to do more than 8 for 23 yards. But Claypool, he goes deeper. This is one that could go to the house. He goes short instead. Miscommunication on someone's behalf. And Eli Apple has a ball that anyone listening here should have been able to catch. That's right, folks. Even if you're grandma or grandpa happened to listen and subscribe to the Steel City Underground podcast, it would have been right in their lap on the couch. Would have been that easy to get that ball. That's how wide open Eli Apple was. And it was almost like he should have been wearing a different jersey. That sucks, but the Steelers defense on the 1 yard line, Chris Wormley gets to Joe Burrow, knocks him back 12 yards, makes him think about it. They kick a field goal. It's already 10-0 halfway into the first quarter. Not a good look. Steelers get the ball back. Chase Claypool tagged illegal formation. Now you're already at 1st and 15. You get an offside call, but you didn't really get a free play. You get some of those yards back. 2nd and 9. Ben passing to Najee Harris. No gain. Just short dink and dunk crap. He does find Deontay Johnson. They pick up enough. They get a first down. An incomplete pass. Short left doesn't say the target. 1st and 10. Another incomplete pass intended for Zach Gentry. A deep pass intended for Chase Claypool. They settle for a 40-yard field goal. They're trying to answer right away. And they run about 3:44 of that drive. The defense gets to sit a little bit here. But the defense was already on the field, 5.5 and then 14.5, almost 15 minutes of real time in this game. They get a little bit of a breather, 12 minutes real time, but 3:44 off the clock here. Steelers only get 3, and that's pretty much all they would do. The Bengals get the ball right back, 6 plays, 75 yards in 3 minutes. 1st and 10 to T. Higgins, 16 yards. It wasn't even that much of just Joe Mixon. They throw. Jamar Chase for 12 yards, and then the 32-yarder to T. Higgins where he high points the ball, and just one man was given better genetics than the other. And that's the reason why some of these guys are 1st and 2nd round picks, and some guys aren't drafted at all, and just has to do with whatever God gave you, right? Steelers, they get the ball back, and they're just going to end up punting. They get out to the Cincinnati 47, and that's all the better that they can do. That's all they can manage. They actually ran twice in a row, 2 of those 8 carries on this drive for 2 yards apiece by Najee Harris. Sets up a 3rd and 6, and they find Pat Freiermuth. And then it's like pretty much Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth were ignored the remainder of this game. And I said, this is why I'm so confident about these draft picks being the future of this team. You got to hitch the wagons to these guys and get and ride and just let those horses pull this team. It didn't happen in this game. I don't know if there was panic or what. I don't want to go through all of this, but 14 plays, 84 yards. This was a play that was called back from Joe Mixon scoring and then went right back in from a yard out. Usually tough to stop a team like that. 7.5 minute drive, another 12 minutes in real time. Defense getting gassed, and these are guys that I'm still not sure were 100% healthy. And when you have Hayward and Wormley as your main guys up front, how much rest do they get during the week? We're already midway through the season. These guys, injuries piling up or being sore. Hayward got a day off from practice, actually, just to heal up some more. TJ, I'm not sure. But let's see here. Joe Mixon, the Steelers, 3 and out. 2-minute warning. This is the one where Chase Claypool had the ball hit him right in the 11, right in the middle of his chest. And it was an opportunity because you're at 2 minutes, you have 3 timeouts. You're now down 24-3. You may have an opportunity to score here. You get a touchdown here. It's 24-10. You go into halftime. You probably leave no time left on the clock for Cincinnati to do something. You go into halftime. You get the ball to start the third quarter. Maybe that could be 24-17. And now, you create a splash play or something, and this game could turn the other way around because you've already had the splash plays that Cincinnati had, the ball right on the doorstep. And that was kind of the difference here, too. The Bengals get the ball back here, and they chew off a good minute and get all the way down. And they go from their 29 to the Steelers' 36. Joe Burrow goes for T. Higgins again. This time, Minka says, I'm not going to have any of that. And then he makes a somewhat decent return, makes a little more out of it because I think he gets the ball right around, it's right in front of the pylons. It's at the 3-yard line, 18-yard return out to the 21. Now it's almost like you just had like a kickoff. You just get the ball off a kickoff. You got to march the whole field with 37 seconds, 3 timeouts still, 37 seconds. Ben looks, another short pass. I'm not sure where this is going. It's not really going to the sidelines, and I'm not really sure that James Washington was looking for it. And Mike Hilton just steps right in front of this for a pick six and totally turns it right back. You had the momentum going, and you already screwed up with the Chase Claypool drop on 3rd and 1 from the Steelers' 34. Now, at this point, down 24-3, I kind of wonder at the 34, yeah, there's 2 minutes left. If you go for it and don't get it there, you've already given Evan McPherson field goal range. I think he could bang at least about a 50-yarder, or at least the way the Bengals have been moving the ball, they could score again and make this even worse. But what ends up happening is just a 37-yard punt from Harvin anyways, and they do make it worse, and they're lucky that Minka gets this, and it's like, whew, still in this. Can they do something in 37 seconds? Maybe something off of Chris Boswell's foot at the very least. No, a pick six, 31-3 before you even go into the locker room. Literally a 0-yard drive. This is where I think everything flips there in this game. It sucks because you kind of hope you get a little bit more out of these drives, and the defense isn't able to live up to their part. And like I said, everyone stunk, both sides of the ball, some at fault and some other things, mitigating factors. The defense just, it's the only thing I could think of, man. They're not healthy and not rested, and they're not playing up the par, and there's a lot of pieces that were missing, or you're trying to reload. Is that going to make this year a lot more painful? It could. I was really hoping that, it said statement-type games. This is the kind of game that's a really big deal in the AFC North, and whether there's a turning point with the changing of the guard and everything else. And this is where you're at. And I mean, it's 31-3. Is there a whole lot to even talk about? The Steelers don't do squad do when they get the ball to begin the half again. At least the defense forces the first punt of the game by Kevin Huber on the next possession. Ben fumbles 5 plays into the next drive. The Bengals have the ball just beyond midfield. The defense does hold to a 51-yard field goal here. It's 34-3. Third quarter, the defense forces a punt, and because of a fumble, put into a crap situation. And some of this, too, is just Cincinnati not executing. It's not even all the defense. There's a play here. What was it? Was it T. Higgins, maybe? Somebody did, Jamar Chase. Somebody just doesn't make the play. And they left Joe Burrow hanging much the same way Claypool did with Roethlisberger in that second quarter series. The Steelers get the ball back and go 3 and out. They gain all of 2 yards here. Najee Harris up the middle, no game. Ben, incomplete, short right, Deontay Johnson, another one of these. Ball was thrown almost behind the line or at the line of scrimmage. He would have lost if he would have caught the ball, which he's been fantastic at pretty much doing. This wasn't the best thrown ball. That's why he didn't catch it. They would have lost yards on it, so it's good that he didn't catch it to begin with. Then a short pass, a little dump off to Najee Harris for 2 yards on 3rd and 10 from the Steelers' 25. Are you trying to tell me that this is a Matt Canada play here? I don't buy it for 1 minute. Okay, the one over to Deontay Johnson, there's been a lot of plays this year where it's like, let's get the ball into some of our playmakers' hands, let them break the first tackle, make a guy miss, and that's how we're going to gain. It's been too much of that. Whether it's Pat Freiermuth, we saw that before, where he doesn't get to the chains. Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, who makes a lot of people miss. Chase Claypool, who is a beast, a grown-ass man when it comes to his size and talent and physical traits as a wide receiver. And it's not happening. Some of that, yes, that's Matt Canada. This play on 3rd and 10, somebody's got to execute. What are the wide receivers doing? Are you telling me that the play that's run, the receivers aren't executing it well enough, and that an NFL offensive coordinator, a guy with different experience at different levels of the game, isn't drawing up plays where guys can't get open? If that's the case, I mean, yeah, fire him. I guess we'll see. But I'm trying to say, who is the scapegoat here? And some of that is now Ben's looking around. My primary read, well, not there. Now I got to look somewhere else. Clock's in my head. Dan Moore is going to be in my lap. Here, throw up to Najee. 2 yards. Now I got a punt. 38 yards. It was windy. There was wind at Paul Brown. So I'm going to give a little bit to the effect of that field goal, even with Chris Boswell. Woo! Like a piece of spaghetti, the way it whirled. Bengals end up scoring big time. They put this game away. This is the one where Pierre misses right on first down. Terrell Edmunds chases down Joe Mixon, which was, he gets him pushed out of bounds, but thank God, like he at least ran him down. 32 yards. They go from their 35 down to the Steelers' 33. Samjay Perrine, a little running back play. This one goes for 12 yards. This is what it should be on the other end. However, Najee was just more of an outlet pass because they're trying to help protect Ben at the line of scrimmage too. Make no mistake about it. Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, we talked about those guys pregame. And not to be too much more of a dead horse, but this is it. Definitely, if there wasn't already a nail in the coffin, 19 yards, James Pierre once again. This would have been ruled a touchdown. They actually get it stopped short. T. Higgins, 19 yards. Joe Mixon bangs in another one from a yard out. Extra points good, 41-3. 5 plays, 65 yards. Only so much you could do when the offense is doing nothing on the other side of the field and giving the ball right back to the Bengals. The offense still didn't. There still wasn't anything that's promising that makes you believe. It's like the aberration is that Chargers fourth quarter. Where did all that come from? Is Ben calling? Ben's not calling his own plays. If anything, he's calling plays at the line of scrimmage that are Matt Canada's plays. He's not shouting out all the different instructions to these receivers. Okay, you go, you run this route, you run this route. It's not even enough time to get all of that going. You've got your drills, you've got the stuff that's on your wristband, and you're saying, okay, we're running this. Boom. Maybe you got an option out of it, and it's set up that way. Run, pass, option stuff. There was like no play action, nothing else. This stuff was just so bland. And again, were they just so shell-shocked and panicked by getting behind in this game that everything went out the window again? It seems to be the MO. And the common denominator, of course, through all the coordinators, everything else is Ben, so he's getting the blame. Tomlin getting that blame. There's going to be people that say, oh, there's nobody that comes off of Tomlin's coaching tree. Most of the guys that come through, Todd Haley going to be a coaching tree guy? He was already a head coach in the NFL. Keith Butler has been with the Steelers since Bill Cowher was coaching. That stuff drives me absolutely insane to see some of the filth that comes through from the Steelers so-called fans and those on the bandwagon. I'm getting long in the tooth. I'm getting up against it. Is there anything else worth even talking about here? A couple of bad snaps still. Ben somehow recovers the ball. And then there's an ineligible downfield pass or player, Chukwuesekora for. Zach Banner gets in there a couple times. We see Anthony McFarland working in a little bit. I wish they would have sat Ben. I really do. He doesn't like to come off. Let the guy heal and rest. Just put Rudolph out there because it's not – at this point, there's no reason. I think you could have given Rudolph the whole fourth quarter. The Steelers get the ball in 13 minutes. They're down 41-3. What else are you going to do? Somebody's like, why don't they put Haskins in? He's inactive for the game. He wasn't going to be in there. So when he's not on the inactive list, you're not eligible to play. But Pat Freiermuth, just a dude catch there. He gets a tip of the cap. I'm not sure why Ben doesn't look to him more like he used to with Heath Miller. The rest of the game, just absolutely, nothing of note to even mention here. I think I've picked on everyone that I want to pick on. I think I've said everything I need to say. Steelers somehow not in the bottom of the AFC North since the Browns lost and are 6-6. You got Baltimore 8-3, Cincinnati 7-4, Steelers 5-5. You got a lot of similar records around the AFC. Steelers are at the bottom of this playoff hunt now, on account of this loss and also the tie with the Lions, which looms large because if they were 6-5, they're probably the next team looking to peek into this picture. Losing some head-to-heads don't help. Also with the 6-5 Chargers and 6-5 Raiders. The Denver Broncos are also 6-5, but they will have a tiebreaker with them should they play. Should they be up in the rankings with them? Indianapolis 6-6 looking around. And then you got New England once again in the lead of their division 8-4 with Buffalo right behind at 7-4, who the Steelers would also have a tiebreaker with if they could do anything else in their conference. Maybe pick up, and they could do that if they could win within their division. So I'll cover that next time. I got to put a bow on this show. I'm long-winded. I'm getting a sore throat. I've already been angry, losing sleep, lost all my hair from all the previous years of following the Steelers. The ticker's still good. I don't have a heart condition just yet. Maybe a mental condition because I'm not firing everyone. But you look at the pieces on the defense, and then you look at what they had to replace this offseason with no money. The draft picks of what they had. They're getting a lot out of those guys still. Isaiah Loudermilk still playing out there. Trey Norwood getting some time out there. It's imperfect, and it's going to cause you to be upset because you end up going up against the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a ton of top. Look at that offense, man. Like I just said, all those guys: Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, the 3 wide receivers. Those guys are all like first and second round picks, and that's what you're putting Arthur Millette, who you grab off of the Jets. And so you're putting him up against playing in that nickel corner. James Pierre, undrafted. Devin Bush with the bad wheel or whatever, but there's no horses along that front line. I like Chris Wormley, but Chris Wormley was not intended to be a starter. That's aside from all of the other guys they lost last year. The offensive line, I mean, that is what it is. You want to look ahead to next year, they'll be adding some pieces to that. And when they add some pieces to that and they get some other components going, we see who else they bring back. They're going to keep some guys in-house like Minkah Fitzpatrick. I believe Deontay Johnson has earned that right as well. And we'll see what ends up happening. They still got a lot of I just don't understand why they've gone away from like Najee Harris or Pat Freiermuth. Is it just because they're not calling their numbers because they're rookies? And I think these guys, after 1 year in the NFL, they take that leap that next season. They get the whole year. They're in the system. They're not having to deal with their college, the late college bowl game schedule and jumping into the combine and all of that drama. And usually they end up being a much better talent into year 2. And that's what I'm hoping some of the players, such as Kendrick Green and Dan Moore, end up. But you also get excited a little bit of what Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth can be. And again, it's just unfortunate. The Steelers, until DeCastro walked, they didn't have like a ton of cap space. That's how they were able to bring in and make trades. Joe Schobert brought in Trey Turner, brought in Melvin Ingram, who's, I'm not getting enough playing time. It's like, and that looked like that was going to be great with that mix in with those guys. And like he had some juice in the tank. And he goes over to Kansas City and, I'm looking for you, Melvin, where you at? Kind of screws up the Steelers' plans as well, because then you have Taco Charlton, who nobody wanted, who was sitting at home playing and logging some time as well. So it is what it is, fans. That's all the more I could say about it. I know some of you are out there and you say, hey, Joe, you make me feel a little better about all of this stuff. I pump the brakes because I don't know where it's going from here. Please. It's just I can't live angry over a football game, no matter how bad it is. This is like, I said this is one of the worst. If you really want to know the worst experience I had, was the Charlie Batch game up in Cleveland, I think around 2012. I'm going to end the show with this because I think it's relevant. 7 turnovers in that game. You remember Charlie Batch, Chris Rainey at running back, just absolutely miserable. Charlie has to go and play Baltimore, I believe on the road in Baltimore the next week. And even though my opinion of Charlie as a backup quarterback isn't as inflated as a lot of other people who love him as being a hometown guy, his numbers just weren't there. He had a stellar defense. That year, they were still replacing guys on defense too. James Ferrier and Casey Hampton. Those guys start walking away. Aaron Smith unexpectedly hurt. You get those type of players. Troy Polamalu wasn't playing a full season. They had there's a lot of parallels when you look back 10 years, including, I already mentioned, Mike Adams, Kelvin Beachum, offensive line. David DeCastro is a rookie, too. He was banged up. So, but Charlie Batch goes and beats the Baltimore Ravens. And guess what's coming up on deck? And the Browns are going to be happy, too, because they get a bye week and they get to face the Ravens again in Cleveland, coming off a bye after the Ravens play the Steelers. Unfortunately, the Steelers similarly set up for failure as they get to play a short game Thursday Night Football against the Minnesota Vikings. Not happy with the way the schedule falls out, but let's just throw a hypothetical out there. Can the Steelers do the unthinkable and unseat the Ravens? And then the Ravens, they're going to have to limp out of Heinz Field and go on another road trip up the First Energy. And maybe the Browns punch them in the mouth, and now they're down 2 games. Maybe the Steelers do the unthinkable. They surprise all of us. They eke out another win or 2 here. And now all of a sudden, this AFC North is once again in disarray, and they may still have an opportunity. But that's a light that's really far at the end of the tunnel. It almost looks like a pinhole at this point. But it's there. You're saying there's a chance? Quite possibly. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Keep it clean. Be nice. Santa's watching now, folks. We're headed into the holiday season. So, as always, my name's Joe Kuzma, and I encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.